For the men and women who work Niagara Falls, the famous daredevil deaths are not what keep them awake at night. Those cases close quickly, bodies recovered, witnesses interviewed, cause of death documented. The investigations that haunt them are the ones that never close. The disappearances where people simply cease to exist, where security cameras capture someone walking toward the mist, and then nothing. Where search teams deploy within minutes and find only empty water, where families wait for decades, checking their phones each morning, hoping today will be the day someone calls with answers. These are not the deaths the world remembers. They are the cases where everything was done right. The cameras were working, the searchers were thorough, the investigators were relentless, and nature provided nothing in return. No body, no evidence, no closure, just names in filing cabinets that span both sides of the border, connecting New York State Park Police with the Niagara Regional Police Service in Ontario, all searching for the same impossible answers. These are the deaths that still haunt investigators. January 9th, 2017 was Landry Natwari's 28th birthday. That evening, he checked into a hotel in downtown Niagara Falls, Ontario. It was winter, and ice still clung to the rocks below the observation points. This was Landry's 6th trip to Niagara Falls since October 2016. Nobody knew why he kept returning. Not his family in Burlington, Ontario, where he lived. Not the friends who described him as private, quiet, someone who kept his thoughts to himself. He never explained the trips. 5 times between October 2016 and January 2017. Each time the same destination, the Falls. On January 10th, 2017, at 7:15 p.m., security cameras captured Landry Natwari walking near the intersection of Fallsview Boulevard and Dunn Street. He wore a dark winter jacket with gray sleeves, tan pants, and black shoes. He carried a small backpack. He walked out of frame. He never walked back in. When hotel staff entered his room the next day, they found his personal belongings untouched. Within hours, the Halton Regional Police Service issued a missing persons alert. The investigation moved quickly. Detectives reviewed security footage, checked border records, and examined financial records for gambling activity. There was none. Landry had no criminal record, no history of mental health crises, and no debt. Yet he had vanished. Search teams combed the areas around the falls. Helicopters scanned the water. Dive teams searched known collection points. Days turned into weeks. Nothing. The case file grew thicker with interviews and dead ends. 6 trips, always alone, always to Niagara Falls. The pattern was unmistakable, but the reason remained invisible. Investigators privately discussed what some visitors describe as a pull toward the falls. Not suicidal ideation exactly, but something deeper, a fascination that becomes compulsion. What had drawn him back again and again? The question haunts the case file. Landry Natwari's disappearance remains unsolved. Case number 20170002969 stays open. 3 years later, another man would vanish in broad daylight, this time with even more cameras watching. On February 5th, 2020, Jerry P. Zawacki, a 70-year-old taxi driver, arrived at Niagara Falls State Park. By then, the park had become one of the most surveilled tourist destinations in North America. High-definition cameras covered nearly every angle. The technology was supposed to make disappearances impossible. It didn't. Zawacki's taxi was found that afternoon in the main parking lot. Keys inside, no signs of struggle. Park police reviewed security footage immediately. The cameras showed Jerry Zawacki crossing the pedestrian bridge onto Goat Island. The timestamp was precise. Then the footage showed nothing. He never crossed back. He simply stopped existing on video. Goat Island is not large. It's a heavily trafficked tourist area with limited access points and clear boundaries. Hundreds of people visit daily. There are few places to go unnoticed. Yet Jerry Zawacki did. Search teams deployed within the hour. Helicopters with thermal imaging swept the area. Ground teams searched everywhere. Divers checked collection points. They found nothing. The case was entered into the National Missing and Unidentified Person System as MP65123. Investigators reviewed the footage repeatedly, frame by frame, looking for blind spots, technical glitches, any explanation. The cameras showed him enter a defined area with limited exits. They never showed him leave. Everything had been done right. The response was immediate. The technology worked perfectly, and still, Jerry Zawacki remained missing. Zawacki's disappearance proved what investigators had begun to suspect. Surveillance can document the impossible, but it cannot explain it. March 8, 2013 began as a search and rescue operation. It never became a recovery. Peter K. Lipinoga, 54 years old, from Clarence, New York, drove to Niagara Falls State Park that Friday morning. His vehicle was found near Terrapin Point. By early afternoon, witnesses reported seeing a man matching Lipinoga's description near the observation railings. Multiple people gave consistent accounts. A man appeared to enter the water. The witnesses were certain enough to call for help immediately. Park police arrived within minutes. Search and rescue protocols were activated without delay. Dive teams were dispatched. Helicopters launched. The conditions that day were favorable for a water search. Flow rates were normal. Visibility was adequate. Weather was clear. They found nothing. Bodies that enter the Niagara River typically surface within 2 to 6 hours. If they do not surface quickly, they can become trapped in specific underwater formations that search teams know to check. Peter Lipinoga's body followed none of these patterns. The search continued for days. Nothing. On March 10, 2013, the Buffalo News published Peter Lipinoga's obituary. Beloved husband of Nancy, loving father of Jennifer and Kristen, dear grandfather of Emma and Gina. A private family service was held. The obituary did not mention how he died because no one could say for certain. His family buried memories, not a body. The witnesses were clear about what they saw. Law enforcement responded immediately. Search teams were thorough. Everything that should have led to a recovery led instead to questions that have never been answered. The river should have given up his body. Peter Lipinoga's disappearance defied all expectations. Eyewitnesses can be completely certain and still wrong, or the river can break every rule it is supposed to follow. Either way, families are left waiting. Daniel Patrick Leslie was 17 years old when he vanished on January 28, 2016. He was a high school student from Kenmore, New York. Those who knew him described a kind, thoughtful teenager who loved reading and music. That Thursday, he went to Niagara Falls State Park and never came home. Unlike some cases, there were no witnesses who saw Daniel enter the water, and no security footage captured his final moments. No physical evidence was found. His family reported him missing when he failed to return that evening. Park police deployed the full range of resources, including ground teams, helicopters, and divers. The search expanded across multiple days, and they found nothing. On February 3, 2016, just days after his disappearance, the Buffalo News published Daniel's obituary. His parents held a memorial service. The obituary listed his survivors, his brother Edward, his sisters Mary and Julia, his grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins. His case was entered into the National Missing and Unidentified Person System as MP32377. Daniel Patrick Leslie, last seen January 28, 2016. No body recovered, no evidence found, no resolution. For investigators, cases involving teenagers carry a particular weight. There is something about the unfinished nature of a teenage life that makes these cases harder to file away. Daniel would be 26 years old now. His family still waits. They held a memorial service without a body. They published an obituary for a missing person. His disappearance left a family frozen in grief, unable to move forward without answers. But at least they knew when he vanished. Some families wait decades to learn even that much. December 4th, 1990, April 8th, 1992, February 2024, 3 dates that span 34 years. Vincent C. Stack was 40 years old when he went missing from Niagara Falls State Park on December 4th, 1990. He was from Buffalo. No witnesses saw him enter the water. No evidence was found. His family reported him missing. The investigation eventually went cold. 16 months later, on April 8, 1992, a dog walker discovered human remains on the shoreline of Lake Ontario, near Oswego, New York, more than 140 miles from Niagara Falls, badly decomposed, mostly skeletal. A medical examiner determined the remains had been in the water between 6 months and 5 years, but identification proved impossible with the technology available. The body was buried as a John Doe. In 2008, the Oswego County Sheriff's Office uploaded a DNA profile to CODIS, the National DNA Database. No hits came back. The case sat dormant for another 14 years. The remains had traveled an incomprehensible distance, approximately 15 miles down the Niagara River to Lake Ontario, then more than 130 miles across the lake. The journey took 16 months. In 2022, the Sheriff's Office renewed their efforts. They reached out to the Niagara Regional Police Service in Canada. Detective Nisbet, a retired Niagara investigator, had maintained detailed files on unsolved disappearances. His work connected with Detective Constable Sarah Mummery, who coordinated missing persons investigations. Together they began comparing the 1992 remains with missing persons reports. New DNA samples were obtained and compared with genetic material from families. In February 2024, the match came through. The remains were Vincent C. Stack. He had been missing for 33 years, unidentified for 32 of them. The Sheriff's Office notified Stack's family. After more than 3 decades, they finally had confirmation. Vincent had died at Niagara Falls, and his remains had embarked on an impossible journey before washing ashore. Stack's remains were reburied. His family expressed gratitude for the closure, even after so many years. But identification is not an explanation. The family finally knew who. They finally had confirmation of death. What they still don't know is how or why Vincent Stack ended up in the water that December day. The Niagara River keeps those secrets. Detective Constable Sarah Mummery of the Niagara Regional Police Service keeps a database most people never see. Her official title is Missing Persons and Unidentified Remains Coordinator. Her work extends across the international border. She coordinates with American authorities, shares case files, and compares DNA profiles. The Niagara River does not respect borders. Bodies travel. Evidence scatters. Jurisdictions overlap. For years, this created problems. Communication between agencies was inconsistent, and cases fell through the cracks. One case illustrates the problem perfectly. In June 1995, a 46-year-old man went missing from Niagara Falls, New York. That same month, the Niagara Regional Police recovered remains from the river on the Canadian side. Canadian officials were never notified about the missing person case. The remains were buried as a John Doe in Canada. The missing person case remained open in the United States. For 29 years, the two pieces sat in different filing systems on different sides of the border. In June 2023, the Doe Network contacted Detective Constable Mummery about a possible match. She coordinated forensic samples and worked with American authorities. By summer 2024, the identification was confirmed. His family was finally notified. At their request, his name was not released publicly, but after nearly 3 decades, they could finally place a proper headstone on his grave. Today, protocols have improved. When someone goes missing at Niagara Falls, both sides are notified immediately. DNA profiles are shared and forensic evidence is exchanged. For investigators like Mummery, success is measured differently. Success is giving a family answers after 30 years. Success is putting a name on a headstone. It is not the kind of work that makes headlines, but for families, it is the difference between eternal uncertainty and the painful but necessary closure of confirmed death. Between September 19, 2012 and February 2020, 5 people vanished from Niagara Falls State Park. Not the Canadian side. One specific location on the American side. 5 names, 5 dates, 5 open cases. Gregory M. Mish disappeared on September 19, 2012. Peter K. Lipinoga vanished on March 8, 2013. Ali Jamil went missing on January 31, 2015. Daniel Patrick Leslie disappeared on January 28, 2016. Jerry P. Zawacki vanished on February 5, 2020. 8 years, 5 people, same park, 5 disappearances. All 5 cases remain officially open. All 5 are listed in the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. In each case, search teams were deployed. Helicopters, divers, ground teams. In each case, no body was recovered. The pattern becomes more striking when you examine what these cases do not have in common. The victims ranged in age from 17 to 70. Different genders, different backgrounds, different life circumstances. No demographic profile connects them. No shared personal history. The only consistent element is geography. They all vanished from the same park. Park officials emphasize that Niagara Falls State Park is designed with safety as a priority. Barriers line dangerous viewpoints. Warning signs are posted. Security cameras cover high traffic areas. The park attracts more than 8 million visitors annually, and the vast majority leave safely. 5 disappearances over 8 years out of more than 64 million total visitors represents a statistically tiny fraction. But these 5 cases are not typical accidents. Typical accidents result in body recovery, usually within hours or days. The river's behavior is well documented. Bodies surface or get trapped in predictable locations. These 5 people simply vanished. No evidence of foul play was found in any case. No witnesses reported struggles. These were disappearances in the truest sense. People walked into a public park and ceased to exist. For investigators, five open cases from one location raises questions. Is this a statistically normal cluster, or does something about this specific location make disappearances more likely? These are practical concerns, trying to identify risk factors and prevent future tragedies. After multiple investigations and safety reviews, no single location or structural problem has been identified. The pattern exists. The explanation does not. Today, Niagara Falls State Park remains open, visited by millions who photograph the water and leave safely. The mist still rises. The thunder still echoes. But in the files of the New York State Park Police, multiple cases remain open. Missing persons investigations date back decades. Some from the 1970s and 1980s are still technically active, never officially closed, because no body was ever found. Investigators describe common elements across decades. Victims are often alone when they vanish. Weather conditions are usually not extreme. Most cases show no evidence of suicide notes or prior mental health crises. Search efforts begin quickly and are conducted thoroughly. Bodies rarely surface. The Niagara River moves 750,000 gallons of water every second. That is enough force to scatter remains far beyond any practical recovery zone. Some bodies do eventually surface. Vincent Stack's remains traveled more than 140 miles over 16 months. Others are found days or weeks later, but many are never found at all. The river keeps them. There is a difference between knowing what happened and proving what happened. In most cases, investigators can reasonably conclude someone entered the water and drowned. But without a body, without witnesses, without physical evidence, there is no way to determine how or why. Families often express a particular kind of pain. They say closure is not about finding a body. It is about understanding why their loved one went to the falls that day. What drew them there? What happened? Niagara rarely provides those answers. Modern safety improvements have made a difference. Better barriers, more cameras, increased patrols. Warning signs appear in multiple languages. These measures have reduced accidental deaths, but they have not stopped the disappearances. The cases that haunt investigators are not the ones with dramatic falls captured on camera. Those cases are tragic but comprehensible. The haunting cases are the ones like Landrine Touari, who walked out of a hotel and simply ceased to exist. Like Jerry Zawacki, who crossed a bridge and never came back. Like Daniel Leslie, 17 years old, who went to the park and vanished without leaving a single trace. One retired investigator described the work simply: we document what we can. We search where we are able. We remember every name. Sometimes that is all we can do. The falls continue their eternal descent, indifferent to human concerns. The cycle never stops. The power never diminishes. For every family that gets closure like the Stacks did, after 34 years, several more still wait. They still check their phones. They still hope someone will call with news. They still live in that suspended state where grief cannot fully begin because the loss has never been confirmed. The cases remain open, the files stay active, and the river keeps its secrets.